The Red Sea 625 G2 Plus has been up for just over 150 days, and today we're going to go through the ups and downs of this new system. Hey Reef Builders, my name is Remy and welcome back to another video. Before we start, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you know whenever we upload new videos. There is nothing quite like setting up a new aquarium. You've done the research, you've planned, you've taken the measurements, you've dreamed of all of the inhabitants that will be going inside your box of water, and then it's all set up and your dream tank throws you a whole bunch of curveballs. Let's pick up where we last left off with the 625 G2 Plus from Red Sea. So I ordered Tampa Bay saltwater live sand to help diversify the microbiome right off the bat. Added that along with the Fritz Turbo Start, and the cycle started. This sand was tubbed and placed in my sump, and between this sand and my tang gang, I have yet to see any major algae bloom of any kind. I do have a bunch of coralline algae, which is always a good sign until, it gets all over your back wall and you have to scrape it every week. Unless you prefer the more natural look, of course. Now you may remember I sent a couple of water samples to Aquabiomics just after I added the live sand. I just wanted to see what the baseline bacterial picture looked like. Much like ICP results, these results can also be a little overwhelming. Thankfully, I know a guy who distilled these results down to something pretty digestible. Salem?
What's up, Reef Builders? Salem Clemens here. Just got Remy's Aquabiomics results, and there's some very interesting things going on for sure. Unluckily for him, he does have a coral pathogen, but it's good news for everyone watching this video because it's a relatively easy one to deal with, and we'll be talking about ways to manage it. So if you have this pathogen on any of your results, you might be able to take something from this video and apply it to your tank. So Aquabiomics has a methodology to determine which tanks have a healthier or more successful microbiome. I can't remember how it is exactly, but basically what this says is that compared to all of the tanks in Aquabiomics database, so out of everyone that's ever sent in a test to Aquabiomics, his tank is at one which has a more balanced microbiome, which is more indicative of having a successful and healthier reef tank. Now, the biggest thing from this test was that he has one coral pathogen, which is Aqua rickettsia raurii, which is a mouthful, and I'm sure I pronounced it incorrectly. I don't know how to say these things, but I've certainly read a lot about them. So it's a member of the order Alpha Proteobacter. These are all obligate intercellular parasites. There's even some that can jump from humans, from animals to humans that, zoonosis happens. So these are things that are not just coral pathogens, but occur in the wider world as well. So they parasitize the holobiont for aminos and ATP. If there's nutrient-rich conditions that can basically cause lower coral growth because these guys are sucking up all the energy that the zooxanthellae are producing and siphoning off of them. These are opportunistic, so they're not going to outright kill a coral, but there was a large study that I've read in the past, and they're basically the linchpin for dysbiosis to occur. So if they're siphoning resources from a coral, once an external stress event happens, then that means bleaching can occur, and it really can just tip the scales in having the coral go down a bad route because it has less energy to deal with that stress event, less energy to mount defenses to external bacteria or parasites, and less energy to activate different metabolic pathways, which can produce metabolites which can assist in scavenging reactive oxygen species, activating heat shock proteins, any type of cellular defense mechanisms to external stress, whether it be pH, nutrient concentrations, or temperature, are all going to be bottlenecked by having this guy live inside of the coral and take its nutrients. It's very vampiric in a way. So this study found that genetics is a very, very large factor, and if this parasitic bacteria could affect the holobiont. So first, that means if you're buying mostly aquacultured corals, you have a larger chance of having corals that have better genetics, that are more adapted to the swings in our aquariums. Aquaculture is a process of artificial selection where we're choosing corals that can withstand swings that are unlike the ocean, as well as exposure to pathogens. So if you're buying aquaculture, you're more likely to have corals that have a stronger immune system and response to external stress, which are both things that can really shoot this guy in the foot and stop him from coming in. Remy can introduce heterotrophic bacteria. Any of the types of like clean blends and things like that could potentially be beneficial here in eliminating them from the water column, because they do spread from coral to coral, either through the mucus or just from the flow pushing them. So that's one thing. Third, he can polycrop. So I had a new article out about this recently. So placing corals of different species in different regions, avoiding gardens and having very high flow with corals that can have that flow, because it spreads through locality. Having that high flow between similar coral types means that it's less likely to go from A to B if they're right next door. If you've got acros that are placed of the same species that are placed, a foot across the tank, it's less likely you're going to have them jump from A to B compared to having them this close. So I'm going to have a couple predictions here for his next Aquabiomics test. I think he is going to have an increase in the Oceanospirillea. I think the Rhodobacter ACA will go up a little bit. I think that Vibrio should hopefully stay low. That's just like more so knock on wood, but it might increase. Depends on where he gets his coral from and if he adds them or not. And I think the Pelagiobacter will go down significantly because of the addition of the UV sterilizer. Now, let's talk about the fish side of things. So there was a couple interesting things. Nothing really bad, though. Lots of marine fungi, which is pretty cool to see. Those are beneficial in their own right. There's a couple sponges. There was DNA signatures from bivalves of some sort, which it could just end up being some hitchhikers that were in the sand that are like, there's lots of microscopic or very small bivalves. So you got bivalves in there. And then there's the real bad one, which is Uranema. So that's a hard one to do in a display tank. Because, UV can help with the low flow rate. You can try to dose things like tea tree oils or peroxide. You can't really do formalin in tank with corals. You could do metronidazole, but for that large of a tank, you're gonna have to add a lot of metro. And even then, Uranema is a pain because it's not an obligate fish parasite. These guys survive on detritus, so they, are multimodal. They can eat lots of different food sources. So unless you're eliminating all of that population chemically, you're not eliminating them. So going forward, the best way to do that, unless you want to tear down and bleach the tank, is management. So keeping the fish healthy overall, lots of feeding, lots of nori for the tanks, quarantining fish before they come in so they don't have any pre-existing conditions which could then make them a magnet for it. Yeah, that one's just some bad luck. So a lot of good from this, a very diverse microbiome that is balanced, a very manageable coral pathogen, and overall a very good baseline. Just have to pray on the Uranema, but this will be a good case study to see how things can be pushed one way or the other. So I'd say it's a waiting game. I wouldn't do anything crazy. Maybe add some of the hydrospace stuff, but that's about it. Keep on reefing, everyone.
What did we do before we had all this great technology to show us what was in our water? Oh yeah, we didn't worry as much about what was in our water. Now I have a coral pathogen to look out for. This is what happens when you get live sand or live rock from the ocean. It's one of the risks you take, and honestly, I think eventually this will all iron itself out. All right, let's go take a look at what's actually going on inside the tank. You'll notice right off the bat, the fish population. Currently, I have 2 clowns and my Tomini tang from the previous system, a chromis that my son picked out, and thankfully, no Uranema on that guy. And if anyone would get it, it would definitely be him. I've got a DiJardini tang and also a purple tang, and one of my favorite fish to always put in any system is a golden assessor basslet. The only problem with these basslets is that you usually don't see them. Now, I am lucky at this point, until I add other fish, that he's pretty out in the open, and it's always fun to watch him go upside down into the rocks and do all the weird stuff that these yellow basslets do. And if you've got a nano system, I actually have one in my 25 lagoon as well. They are great fish, add a little pop of color, and they've got their own little personalities as well. All the fish get along for the most part right now, not a whole lot of aggression issues, which may change in the future as I add new fish. But the only problem that I've faced so far is the dreaded ick, which showed up on, yes, you guessed it, the purple tang. He was looking pretty rough for a week or two, but was eating, so I took a lot of advice from a lot of different people, soaked the food in Celcon, soaked it in Vitachem. I also added a 25-watt Aqua UV just to get any of that free-floating ick that is in the water. Now I realize that ick may never actually die off in this system, and that any major stress event could set off an exacerbation of this ick again, but it's clear right now, and I have all of the systems in place, hopefully, to keep that at bay if it does decide to show up again. Right now, the coral in the system have been doing pretty good. I did lose some pieces due to a salinity swing while I was on vacation because, you know, all problems happen when you're on vacation. My guess is the ATO timed itself out and just stopped working, even though there was water in the reservoir, and that shot my salinity way up. I was at 1.029 or 39 parts per thousand, which obviously isn't ideal. And if I had to give you a hypothesis on what may have happened, I'm guessing the corals showed a stress response, and that coral pathogen that came up in that Aquabiomics test took advantage of the situation and killed the corals. New tanks can be finicky to start, and that obviously will vary from tank to tank. The amount of variables is astounding, and especially when you jump into the world of the bacterial microbiome. Now I'd like to see how much of the bacteria that I nuked with my UV while going through the ick. I'm gonna send another test off to Aquabiomics, and I'll share that in the next update video for sure. If you've been following along with this tank, you may remember the hitchhiker crab that came along with the sand. Well, he's growing up, he is getting larger, and when he crawls out of the tank one day because he gets too big and he taps me on my forehead while I've been sleeping, I'll let you know. We still don't know what this crab is, so if you have any guesses, leave that in the comment section below. Just a quick rundown of equipment right now. I'm not really running a ton of things on this tank yet. I've got the reef mat, which has been a beast. I haven't even fired up the skimmer yet because this reef mat is doing such a great job. Nitrates and phosphates have been totally acceptable at this point in the tank's life, anywhere from like 3 to 5, 3 to 7-ish on nitrates, and 0.02 to 0.06 was the highest that I've seen for phosphates so far. So I don't want to turn on the skimmer and bottom those out right now. It seems like those are pretty okay with the current bioload. I have been dosing a very light amount of kalkwasser overnight, about a liter overnight for this tank, which keeps my pH at 8.1. The alkalinity is at 8 DKH, and my calcium is right about 400 parts per million. It's up and running, and there is life, and I feel like that's an exciting part of any aquarium journey, right? Perfect timing for reef stock. I will definitely be traveling home with some new coral for this tank. And I hope you can join us on March 2nd and 3rd at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Denver, Colorado. If you're coming in with a long drive or you live locally, we cannot wait to hang out. It's always a great time. Reef Stock is so much fun. Get your tickets at reefstock.show/Denver. I'm also going to be taking one of my long polyp sarcophytans to the Reef Builders studio, so I'll document that journey as well. From the very novice beginners all the way up to the veterans in this hobby, everybody faces different obstacles. That's just what makes this hobby fun. There's always something to keep you on your toes. Would love some good fish suggestions, so if you could leave those down in the comments below. I'm looking for things that you don't typically see in the hobby. I know I've got the DiJardini, I've got the purple tang, I've got the Tomini tang, I've got the clownfish. Those are all very common fish, but my golden assessor, you don't see those very much, and that's the kind of thing I'm after. Those fish that you don't see very much of. And make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you know when we upload new videos. This tank just looks like a black box right now, but there is water in it. I don't want to get it started until after reef stock, so I'm just going to let it chill, but it's definitely surpassed the leak test phase. It's just got a bunch of RODI in it right now, so excited to set this one up as well. Hope to see you at Reef Stock. I think this will be the last video before you start seeing Reef Stock content, so if you don't have your tickets, again, reefstock.show/Denver, and I will see you in the next one.